I can't really see the screen, so you know, Eric. So if there's something on the screen you want me to see, I'm gonna have to move down.
So if I do this, you don't see it anymore?
Well, look behind you and you can see what you're seeing. So I'm gonna have to,
You want to be more like here, I guess?
okay.
That's a swell camera job right there.
So we got a choice here. We get the screen or we get the whole board, which is our priority.
You want to move this way? You can stay up there. It's fine.
Go too far over, you get the.
All right, so while this is loading, I want to do just a quick overview of the console. Go from the beginning. Can you see this on the left?
Give them some feedback, folks.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you need to participate because otherwise the most boring thing you ever had to endure. Okay. This section here is called the configuration or preamp section here. This is where we have our gain. Gain structure is one of the most important things in audio world, especially with digital console. Gain is for the signal level that is coming into the device. Okay? So this is to establish how much signal is coming in to the console. If you have too little, you struggle to have good level in your console. If you have too much, it will sound distorted and bad and muffled and awful. Every section here has a view button, so when you click view, you can see this screen changes, and it allows you to see the input that you're using for the console. Come on, there it is. So the input, in this case, I completely zero out the console, so it's looking at the onboard input or connection in the back. Okay. What that does, or what this means, is that channel 1 is not necessarily channel 1. I can have it be whatever it is within 32 inputs. So to answer Pastor Mike's question, let's say we want to create a scene that will have 6 channels, and those 6 channels happen to be in 4 different places here in the board. So I can have the first 6 faders be those 6 channels by changing the number or the source of each individual channel. Okay? Let me make a more complicated example of that. So let's say your microphone is plugged into, I believe, was something like 9. But you don't like number 9, and you have this event that you're only going to use 4 microphones, and you want them right here. So you can say, well, channel 13 will be listening to input number 9. Channel 14 will be listening to input number 10. Channel 15 can be listening to input 24. And then we can turn off all of it, and you have 4 channels right here that are all the inputs that you really want to use. And you don't need to unplug things in the back. Why is that important? Because Sunday, you need the console back the way it was. Make sense? So that's what the source is for. Also, source allows you to select channels straight from the board or from that box that we have on stage, which is the stage box. Make sense? No? Yes, sir.
So would you select a source, put the microphones in that you want, save that as a preset, and then it'll automatically use that?
You could. Yes.
Because I think that's what Pastor Mike would really like.
Correct. So And to answer his question, which is, can we create certain scenes that are specific to certain moments or events? The answer is yes. It's not necessarily an easy way to go about it, but once it's set up, and as long as the person operating it understands what's going on, the answer to both your question is yes. So that's the way you would do it.
That was one of the things that I struggled with. I watched some YouTube videos and such. It's so rich in settings that there is some awareness that you have to have separate and apart from what you're looking at here.
Right.
You have to have some a priori knowledge that this is going here when you're using it.
Right. So,
And when something doesn't work, so you know where to look where somebody changed something.
right.
And that's a big deal, a lot to learn.
So, in the past, with your old console, it was what is called a 1-to-1. So input 1 is channel 1, input 2 is channel 2, so on and so forth. With this, input 1 can be whatever you want input 1 to be. I actually, one of the things that I love to do for certain bands that I mix is I put the guitar on 2 channels, pan them left and right, change the delay time on one, and all of a sudden I have a stereo guitar. Or if I have a female vocalist that sometimes it's too high in the chorus and too soft in the verses, I have one input in 2 channels, and I do parallel compression, which we can explain that further. So I have 2 channels of one vocal. One is catered for a very high volume voice, and the other one is just right for when she's really soft, right? So those are things that you can do. Those are things that you could do just by having the ability of changing the inputs without you going behind over there and changing the cables. And that's a feature that you have here. Let's look at this screen again. We talk about the source. Let's talk about low cut, because that's something you guys will benefit of. A low cut is basically a filter that allows you to get rid of the low end. Okay, I'm gonna show you how it works here. So this graphic represents 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, which is your sound spectrum that your ear can hear, 20 to 20. So when I do this, you see that yellow looking area here? That means that none of those frequencies are being pushed out or transmitted for that specific channel. Why is the low cut a useful or necessary tool? Why do you think? Or when do you think you would use that?
Low
Okay.
resonant feedback.
Or motion of the microphone touching and such.
Exactly. What else? Let me give you an example. Do you need your vocals to go through the subwoofers on the floor? No. Why? Sounds like what? Right? So I can use this tool to get all of that rumble out of a vocal mic, so that way the subwoofers don't have to deal with it. Make sense? Guitar players sometimes they don't pay attention to their low end. They're more concerned about their high end. So there's a lot of rumble that is left behind because sometimes amplifiers or guitar players don't, amplifiers are so high up that they don't listen to those. But the microphone's gonna pick it up. So every time they do a palm mute or something, my speakers in the front of the house want to die, So I take low end out. Guitars are not they don't need low end in the front house. maybe we have a lavalier mic or a headset that is a little bit more sensitive than what we need it to be, so we take the low end out. Those are examples, okay? That happens in the preamp section, which is right here, right? What would be a negative effect of having this here in your preamp section? Well, that means that if I change this low cut here, I change it for everything and everybody. Okay? So if I take the low end or take too much low end, then your in-ears for your vocal are gonna sound very teeny because I took way too much. Okay?
I personally didn't understand what you meant when you said suddenly the scope went from one channel to everybody.
Because this is, so this section is for whatever channel I have plugged in, okay? So let's focus on that. So you see channel 16 here? Let's say this is the lead vocal mic. And I'm setting up her gain structure here, so the level, right? And then I decide that I want to take low end up to here. She's gonna notice that change. Not only in front of house, everybody that is listening to this microphone on any of the mixes is gonna notice that change. Make sense? Because this is affecting the input directly. This is affecting the signal that is coming into the console.
Was there one button that you were on though that was everything that you were saying?
This
Like, that was the mains, or no?
I don't understand the question, sorry.
That's why I asked the question.
You were saying that when you make that adjustment, it affects everything. They thought you were talking about the mains. But you're talking about the in-ear monitors and
When I say, okay,
the monitors mix and all that stuff.
so let me backtrack. I know where the breakout is. When I say everything, I'm not saying that this button is going to affect every input in the console.
Yeah.
I'm saying that this button, is affecting the channel that is selected, and the input, the signal of the channel that is being selected. But the output of this channel, or the product signal of this channel, after I move this knob, will be heard or noticed by everybody down the chain, or mixes, monitor mixes, recording, mains, all of that. Is that clearer? Yes. Okay. So we're back in the configuration here, preamp section. The next one is delay. This delay is not a special effect or anything like that. This is to time align the input to a source. When is that important? Sometimes, have you noticed that sometimes the video will run at a certain speed and audio is either ahead or behind? So this allows you to time align that, to get the audio later, hence the word delay. In live sound, it's kind of neat, assuming this console is not feeding headphones, which in this case is. But when I'm in big stages, I use the delay to time align things that are loud, like the snare. Every time the snare hits, bah, I delay it, I make it a little slower to go out the speakers. So by the time that the actual sound of the snare hitting goes to my front of house speakers, that's when the front of house speakers go out. So it goes with it. The result for a front of house guy is I don't get the slap. You experience that slap, da-da, da-da, right? And I also get a cleaner, more coherent sound. The problem with you guys is that that will also affect the way that that particular channel sounds down the chain. So if I decide to apply delay on a snare or a bass or something, you guys will hear it later too. So you do boom, right? And that might not be very useful. That's what that feature is for.
Is that really gonna affect us in the building the size?
And
Don't mess with that time delay, or is it gonna be noticeable in building the size?
sorry, I'm kind of lost your question.
Is that gonna be a problem that we would need to use the time delay?
No, I
The
don't.
size?
No, I don't think you do. You don't have a big enough room. Yes, but I have to explain it so nobody comes in and go, "Hey, we should do later over here," you know. And the thing is, I don't know. Show them here. It shows you the distance and it shows you time. So somebody started messing with it and goes all the way to 500 feet. That's 449 milliseconds. It's literally like right? But you won't hear the first hit. You will hear that either your drummer is that much later playing, or that your piano player is that much later playing. So when will this be really cool to use? Things like if you have like a streaming, you're trying to do streaming, you want to time align something, whether you're downloading things from online or whatever, you could use that. Or let's say you're gonna put a speaker outside, you want a time aligner or something with distance, something that has to do with distance. That's when you want to do that kind of stuff.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Maybe this will be advanced, but it seems to fit here. When I was looking at the board, it seemed like these features exist multiple times along the chain.
Yes.
So if you were streaming something, you'd want to consume it one way here, but the tap that's going out the stream, there you would want to put the delay. So
Sure.
can you put the delay one place and not other places?
Yes. The bad part about this console, compared to other consoles in the market, is that this doesn't have time alignment on the output. It has it on the input.
Oh, so you can't do it after
You
the
have
input.
to do a little bit of routing magic to
Oh,
and
to fake it
sacrifice
into an
one of
input.
these channels to do what you're
I
talking
got you.
about.
So you're faking an input back from the output.
Right.
Gotcha.
And it's silly. But again, I want to explain what that is. So if you experience that, is because somebody probably just pressed that.
Eric, on that monitor, what comes up whenever you turn the board on? What you're showing us now is not what's on there when it comes up, right?
It shows whatever was pushed
Last time.
last. Yeah. And
What do you recommend comes up each time? I mean, what you're showing us now, or, but we just need to know how to,
When it comes up, it'll come up with what was on there last Sunday, unless somebody goes in and selects a scene of a different.
right. So if it's very important for you to know every single page, because nothing is, is whatever was last. When you turn it on, whatever's was last. So if you don't know where you are, you don't, that it's one of those, well, I don't know what that means, or I don't know where I'm at. Then you don't know where to go. You don't know how to get to where you really want to go.
This is the trade-off between the analog and the digital board. You get a whole
Right.
bunch of stuff, but you pay the price of having to know how to use it.
Right.
So if I set this up on Thursday for a funeral and have only certain channels on for those microphones that you want to use, on Sunday morning, when somebody else turns it on, first thing they're gonna see is that configuration.
Right. And then it will go like,
And if we don't have proper training, we have someone else on the soundboard, they're gonna say, why is it not working? It's muted.
why is
How
it
do I
not
fix it?
working? All right.
So,
All right, that was clear as mud. there's still two more things that I'm gonna cover over preamp and configuration here. Is over here, is your 48 volt and your polarity. Okay, so we know this is the controls the signal coming into the board. Okay, and we're gonna cover. This is not downloading, so I don't know if we will be able to cover it
What Wi-Fi are you
on the two.
on? No, go to Canyons or Canyons Gas. 2 and 5 are further out in the building. That's why it's
Okay,
going slow
so
on you.
Canyons.
Yep.
Okay, get me in. Bro.
What do you suggest is like a general gain level? What's too much, what's too little?
That's what I would love to cover today.
Okay.
And that's why I'm in this section, and that's why I would love to have this,
Yeah.
because that will,
Do we have something on the screen that's telling us when it's clipping?
yes, I'm gonna show you two ways to see it.
Eric,
Is that doing better?
For instance, Randy's talking about the funeral on Thursday, but at the end of the day, if somebody's doing something special, there should be a master to go back to that they push and say, okay, the board's back to,
Sunday, which is what I plan
yeah,
on doing on
Sunday.
Thursday.
But we probably need to know how, everybody needs to know how to go to that place.
Once it's programmed, we'll have notes that we can look at.
Yeah. So that's, yeah. So anyway, let's explain what these two buttons are. That seems to be downloading now. It's 48 volts, it's phantom power. That's for condenser mics. There's basically two kinds of mics in the whole wide world. Condensers and dynamics. Yes, sir?
When I set up the choir mics in front of the children when they sing, I have to set up those channels that I plug those microphones into with that 48 volts.
Okay.
It won't work
Those-
if you
those
don't
need-
hit that 48 volts.
Right.
They will not work.
Condenser mic,
Those mics are dead unless you, that type of mic is dead unless you send it 48 volts.
Can you break things by sending 48 volts to the wrong mic?
Used to, but most technology now has some bypasses or what are they called? They have things inside that will not allow that.
right. Like really old ribbon mics.
Yeah.
So if you have like a classic mic, a ribbon mic that you thought, oh, I found this on Amazon and it's so good looking.
Well, if you have a special speaker who has his own mic, you have to be careful.
Right. You probably will see a little bit of smoke. Okay. Most microphones nowadays, like Randy says, they are ready to receive phantom power even if they don't need it. Especially like 58s or anything like that. Your wireless receivers will tolerate it, but they don't like it. So they will tolerate it, but eventually that output will start kind of giving you problems. 48 volts. So if you touch the mic line, you're not gonna die. You're not gonna be shocked. But it's sending electricity down the line for a condenser mic to be able to work. Then polarity, what it changes is the way, in layman's terms, where the negative and positive are in the microphone. Why is that even important to know? There's all kinds of cool things that you can do, like if you have two microphones and you reverse polarity. When, sound is just waves in the air, right? So it's up and down. That's translated in positives and negatives, right? So when it hits the microphone, which is very important to know, sound goes to the mic. The microphone doesn't go out and reach and gets sound. So when it goes in, the diaphragm either goes in or out, right? And that's how it captures, that's how it knows what that sound is, right? But if you have another microphone next to it, and that same wave comes in, you have one of them reversed, it will cancel the sound. Why is that cool? Because you could use certain microphone techniques to cancel things like ambience, cancel things like I want to focus on a section of a choir, or have you noticed how the president have two microphones when he talks? They have one of them is reversed and they have it positioned in a certain way that all you hear is the president. You don't hear anybody else. Have you noticed that in the press release when he goes and talks? Never seen the president talking on TV?
I always thought it was just a spare microphone. I didn't
No.
realize that's what they were
Those
doing.
two microphones have a reason, and it's because they are, there's no special design in the microphone itself. They're just working at the same time, but one is reversed. So all you hear is his voice and nothing else in ambience. Make sense?
Yeah.
That's that button over there. This is almost ready to download. Any questions, concerns, issues, jokes?
When you were
Yeah,
talking
we
about
go.
gain structure, if I use, my base has active pickups and antennas, but we both go through the same direct box to get to the system. Does it level the signal out on both of those?
Well, you have to manually come here and do that.
Okay.
That's what that knob is for. That's correct. And while we were waiting, this is almost done. Digital consoles, different than what we were used to before. They don't like to be driven by. So a good, the reason all these numbers are negatives is because the closer you are to 0 dB, the more chances you have for distortion. The preamp will tolerate it, but the digital converter in the console won't. Now this is a very good console, don't get me wrong, but it is not necessarily top of the line when it comes to digital boards, okay? With that said, it follows certain guidelines in the digital world. You don't want microphones or any kind of source like a bass or the drums or a click track or anything like that to be too loud, because all you hear is distortion. It's because the digital converter inside is trying to figure it out what those square waves are, and it can't figure it out. And you start hearing popping, and it sounds not good. Consoles, digital consoles like to work around -12 area, and if you can see here, it already says -12 here. I don't love this meter. I like the one over here, because this one gives you way more information, and it's way more active than this one over here. You have an overall information here, but this is a little more accurate as well. How do we get there? So let's say you're on the home page. That's what you see. And you
You
select,
wanna hit home again?
I hit home. Say you're at any page. Let's say you're here. But you want to see the gain, or you want to see the input level on channel 16, which is right here. You see that? You get here, you hit home. This is the home for that channel. And then you go to config, which is,
Scoot closer to the screen, Charles, so we can actually read the words.
Yeah, I'm trying to watch the buttons
Yeah.
too. I'm trying to give you the whole picture. So I'll go in and out
so
here.
you see this tab that says config? That's where that meter is. And it's,
Show how you got there, get that camera on that button.
okay. So I'm somewhere else. Doesn't matter where I'm at. I'm somewhere else, right? It doesn't matter to us. I'm here. And I want to check the input level on channel 14. I select channel 14, then go to home, then I go to the config tab, like
That button right there, that's the one I wanted to make sure they saw.
this one.
It's not a touch screen.
It is not a touch.
Oh yeah,
Some words.
I've seen people break these screens because they think it's touch screen. It's not touch screen. Please don't break it. It's loading, guys. We're gonna have sound in a minute. Let me get it ready.
Sorry, I didn't ask you about that earlier.
Just not a meet, not an emotion.
Sounds like a uni man.
Sounds like fraternity.
The Girl Scout games.
Yeah.
Can I start using you more for lyrics?
Yeah, for lyrics, I'm confused about the sound stuff. So
Yeah, you don't care. Probably won't, just for
do you get them all? That's what I thought. So
a while.
they'll not get it. Don't be trashed. Yeah, all the
I
sound.
need to get used to
The
that.
amplifiers are on, so you know.
I probably will make noise. I want you guys to see how the console behaves first.
She has an iPhone. I don't pick on it like that, but she can take it on there. Only she has an iPhone.
Okay. See all the meters moving?
Yep.
Okay. So this first one is a kick. Right? So I'm just gonna go through the drum set mainly because I'm a drummer and I like it. So when we're talking about gain structure, we select the channel we wanna work with, okay? And that's when we go to that screen. Let me show you another way to get to that screen we were talking about. Select the channel. Then this view button here where it says
How close
preamp.
so we can see words?
Yeah.
See that?
Yep.
Click here. Now look at the screen.
When the view button goes red, the screen changes.
Now you see how nicer that meter is in comparison to that?
Yes.
You get a little more information. It's a good remix there. Now, -12 is a great start. Now, I recorded this session on, this is a live artist on Country Fan Fest. So I use a Yamaha board. And the Yamaha board allows me to be a little bit more aggressive on the preamp. But if you notice, I haven't even touched that, and it's already where I want it to be because it's the way it was recorded. Okay. But just for the sake of exercise, let's pretend that is our level coming from the microphone. Okay, and the guy is playing. You want to at least get it at -12 for your loudest point. And again, I like to look at that one because this LEDs I don't necessarily love. See, that's telling me that it's stopping at -12, but this is saying no, it's going over. Sure enough, it usually is. And I know that's my kick. It's making sense?
So what is your gain sound?
Is that your gain then, that you were
Yes.
manipulating?
Yes. And that is the signal coming where? Going where?
Coming into the board.
Into the board. Randy, why is it so important to check gain structure?
Because if you don't struct, well, the gain is when it's coming into the board at the correct level, then the board can process correctly all of the signals that you're sending in there, the EQ, even the delay could be affected by whether or not the gain structure is correct.
Correct.
Which again, we wouldn't use the delay very much here,
Mhm.
but, the gain structure, will put your microphone levels at, the right level so you can adjust your EQ, prevents feedback, prevents ringing sounds, can even help prevent pops, but that's mostly the way people hold a microphone and whether or not they pop their P's and throw their T's.
Then the next thing about that is basically the end result of gain is volume. It's not meant for you to control volume. It's meant for you to control the signal coming into the board, right? But the end result is, if you don't have enough, you'll be riding that fader all the way to the top, and I can still hear myself. And so if you ever had that problem, and you don't have your sound guy here, like, I have my microphone here, I just connected, I can see it, I can see the level, but I'm trying to put it in my ears and it's not loud enough, probably your gain structure is wrong.
And that's why when we do mic checks, when we stop the singing, we stand at the microphone, everybody starts talking, but they're not singing. When they sing like, "The hills are alive." That's what a mic check is. You want to be projecting, even if you're just talking, talk the way you're going to be singing.
Which is next to impossible, but
Yeah, it is. It really is.
when we adjusted your ears for the first time, what was my first request?
Sing.
See,
Sing, because you don't sing the way you talk, and vice versa. So that's a very, very important practice. Every time we do sound check out in secular world, they don't go check 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 check. They go sing.
yeah.
Okay.
Were you just adjusting the gains on one
Channel.
channel?
Yes, that's correct.
So once you've set them, you adjust the gains on, the gain changes on channel 2 or 3.
Yeah, I keep going down the line.
You'll change it on channel 2 and 3.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking the gain controlled the input on all of it.
No.
It
No.
controls the one channel.
That's why I keep saying, and this is where I'm gonna repeat myself, and I always do it that way, on the channel that is selected. So you're gonna hear me repeat that all the time. On the channel that is selected, because you might be touching this fader here, you might be touching this fader, and start moving stuff here and there. But which channel is selected?
Yeah.
Number 1. So I'm ruining somebody's mix by messing around with this, thinking that I'm 10. But if it's on the channel that is selected, and that's true on every console ever made in the world.
Do you look more on the level, like that -12th level, more than gain can be anywhere from 0 to like, I don't know, 60-ish? If you hit like the gain on that, it'll show you the input level would be at like 29 or.
The knob will not tell me that, if that's your question. The meter will tell me how much signal is coming in, but is my choice to adjust it here.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is
Can I try an analogy?
you set to that -12 mark instead of looking at gain set to 25 instead.
Yeah.
Well, the gain will vary. The gain will be different, because my gain for that kick is not the same as the gain as in the snare or in your voice.
Okay.
So that it will be different. So the meter will tell me how much signal is coming in, but that's not necessarily correlating with where the gain is. It has to do with how much signal whatever device is sending to me.
What's the max gain on this board?
Plus 18.
18, okay. One of the things about adjusting the gain, it's not something you want to do in a performance. It's one of the first things you want to do in a sound check, because adjusting the gain, again, adjusts that channel and everything that channel sends to, including every in-ear monitor
Or floor monitor.
or floor monitor.
If
or
somebody
recording device.
turns, if I already have a mix going on that floor monitor, and somebody touches that gain knob, guess what's gonna happen?
Everything's going up.
If I go up, there goes the feedback,
Yeah.
okay? So this section affects everything down the line where that channel has been sent. That specific channel we're talking about. Cool?
Now, you said this section?
Preamp section.
The preamp section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's like setting
Sending the signal.
the rate of cars going onto the highway at each ramp And then this is controlling the stuff that's going on the highway.
Right. I hate that metaphor because I hate the driving.
I just trying. I'm trying.
Only because I hate driving. Anyway, is that a good example of gain structure? Should we go to a different channel? Because I see some things that are a little louder here. Like,
Yeah.
let's see what this is. Bass. Right, this is the bass channel here, number 8. It's not bad, it's minus 18. But I can turn it up. You see that change? And that's picking at minus 12 now. Look at this level here to answer your question. You see that?
The resolution is so low
Yes.
there that you just.
Okay. But if I'm gonna press on the kick, it's minus 12 too. Look at the level difference.
Yeah.
So going back to bass, just stay
Bass has a
here.
lot more gain.
So going back to bass. Is that true? Versus this.
Okay. That's more gain, right?
Yeah, more gain, less gain. But these are two different channels. You see how they react different? So that means that sources are different. You know, they're gonna need different levels, and that's okay. Now, I like to mix, believe it or not, right there. If my mix looks like that, I'm a happy guy. If my mix looks like this, I'm stressing out.
We didn't see any.
Show those mixes again.
Okay. See, if my mix looks like this,
It's not.
I'm a stress ball.
I think it's recording.
If I do this, and if I can spend the whole night right here, I'm a happy guy. So what is gonna allow me to do this? Nice straight line. Gain structure. Voila, we got it. Okay, move on. Next. In this console, what's next down the chain is gate and compressor, which are dynamics. Are we good to add this to tonight's session? Is it, or you think you have a bunch of information now and you're starting to hate me?
I think we can go a
Go
little
on.
bit more.
Okay. Just tell me when to stop, because I can talk about this for hours. Let's talk about gate first. I want to try and create a loop here.
And Manny, you have a master setting for all that you can go to, right? For all this.
For the
To
board.
go back to normal.
Yeah, yeah.
That should be a loop.
Manny, never get to that.
So that's a loop, okay? This is the kick drum. So what the gate is what the name says, is a gate that opens and closes for the signal that is coming in to us, to the board, okay? So right now, let's look at this. You can hear the kick, right? But what else can you hear? Something. There's ambient noise there, right? Maybe a guitar amp, maybe a monitor from the vocal, maybe cymbals, whatever it is. But there's something there. You notice it, right?
Yeah.
So the gate allows us to get rid of some of that without changing the level. So I have
It's the other drums.
do you see the graphic moving? You notice how that stuff's starting to disappear? Do you hear any ambience now? Don't. That's what the gate does. Make sense?
I don't know what you did, but that was.
So the quieter stuff isn't coming through, just the loud stuff is, right?
You hear the ambience besides the snare. You hear cymbals, you hear all that, right? Do you hear anything else? What?
How does that change the, like the, what you called it, without changing the sound of the,
Ambient noise.
yeah, how does it change the ambient noise without changing?
So what it's doing is, you use these controls to set up the speed of how that gate opens and closes, and how much of that signal is allowed in. Okay? So if I only want to hear the very, very high part of that signal, I'm telling the gate, everything from this level down, you'll be closed. Everything from this level up, you're going to open up. So to get rid of all that ambience, the ambience will never be louder than the snare itself. So back to the example here. The only thing coming through is the snare. If I turn it off, you hear the rest, right? Not anymore.
So you mentioned two components. You mentioned the loudness and the time.
Mm-hmm.
How does the time factor into
Okay,
that?
let's talk about that. To answer that question, let me explain the controls first. Okay, the first one is called threshold. Threshold is what a threshold is how big that door is. And most compressors like this one are negative numbers. So the higher the negative number, that means the smaller it is, right? So I need more signal to be able to go in to that channel. Is that making sense? Can you go in? Do you see that?
Eric?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Threshold. So that's established. Look at the graphics. So if I move here, there's more signal coming in, right?
And if you take out too much,
Then it won't open. Gates closed. You're out of luck.
one thing with gate two, if you have too much, you could actually get to the point where you're only hearing half of the signal as well.
Correct. So when is gate not good, or for what application gate is not good? Singing. So
Talking is one.
don't put a gate on a vocal because that won't be good. But sometimes, let's say your bass have a little fuzzy little thing going on today, and we don't know what it is, and we have 5 minutes to start the service, and we don't know what that little 60 cycle, whatever it is, gate it. Make sense? If we were to ever have an acoustic drum back into the church, and we want to get rid of the ambience noise around it, we'll do it this way. So it also works for, maybe some applications for piano, maybe some applications for certain other instruments. But you don't want things that you need resonance or decay or things like vocals which have high dynamic ranges to be gated, because then you miss a lot of information, like Randy says. Okay. There's another cool thing about gate that I use quite a bit, and it's on the second layer of this effect. So this is what you see on default. You see the 1 and 2 numbers here? If you go down, it gives you another set of controls. The cool part about it is that I can filter, so it only activates the gate with a specific set of frequencies that I want to go through. Okay, so obviously the lower you go, the more bass you get, right? But kick drums don't necessarily have high end. So by doing that, I'm saying only signals on 900 hertz should go in or should be let through. Right now, there's nothing in high 900 that this bass drum is pushing out except that one hit. So when is that cool? I can use gates on other sources, like a specific instrument that I want to have noise on one specific note or one specific tone, or or for an effect like that. Let's say you are running multiple guitar channels, but you only want certain sounds to go off through the board, and I can narrow it down to a group of frequencies, and this will activate only in that moment. And those are, more of a composing type choice that you will have as a sound guy by using a gate that way. Cool? There's two more features in this. One is an expansion, and the other one is a duck. These are used in a more musical way. They're not necessarily very practical for live sound. It goes back to ducking. Goes back to I want certain noise to come out, but I don't want to affect the sound of the instrument itself. So, for example, here, I don't have the low end. I only have the high end going through. And then on expansion, expansion could be used for vocals, where it lets a little bit of the lower levels down, but it closes the gate enough so you don't get a lot of the ambience, but you still have some signal coming through, if that makes sense. And that's what expansion does. I don't like it because, as you can see, you see how much in and out is coming in, is doing, on and off, and in vocals it starts sounding like very choppy. So I personally don't use it, but there's some sound guys that like to use it.
It's almost like a nonlinear compression, isn't it?
Correct. All right. Next one is compression, and I think this is the last one I'm going to cover today. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Compression. Here is dynamics. We know it as compression. Going back to our kick. See here, what it does is I can set up a cap on how loud I want this to be.
Why would you ever turn it down?
Oh, that's what I do with your vocals a lot. Yep. I think I have a singer here. Let me see if I have a singer so I can give you an example.
Don't guitar players use compression to get a nice thick sound?
Never stupid enough, he ever singled you up. He never stupid enough, he ever singled you up. He never
Okay.
stupid enough, he ever singled you up. He never stupid enough, he ever singled you up. He never stupid enough, he ever singled you up.
So what it allows me to do, I go, so notice how, as he as this guy starts singing, there's some words louder than others. He's doing that, right? Now it's level. You remember when we were talking about singers that were kind of softer in the verse but louder in the chorus? So this guy, if you can see this wavefront, he's the great example of that. This is a verse. That's a chorus. Okay? So this guy specifically mumbled the whole show. I was not having it. Okay? So his compression was quite severe in my console when I was mixing for him. Let's see. Okay, so with compression on vocals, for example, I use a lot of compression on vocals. So I do something like ratio of 10 to 1. That means that the signal coming in is 10 times bigger than the signal coming out. That means that it's going to squish it to here. That's what I'm trying to do, okay? And then minus 25 decibels. That means that this level will come down to minus 25. So it will bring it down. If we want to use a fader as an example, let's say that's 0. I'm telling the compressor, whenever that very loud noise comes in, I want you to go all the way down to here. But I don't have time to do that fast, so I'm making this device do it for me. Okay?
So when that's happening in real time, do you have to ride this knee of the curve as they change through the performance? You just get one spot and it works a lot of fun.
Let's see if we can catch. So that's a great example. He yelled the word crazy, right?
Crazy.
Oh, so crazy. So he yells that word, but the phrase before wasn't as loud. You see that? How different that is? Okay. So let's see how the compressor react to it. So in your ear, the level is pretty much the same, but you see how much the compressor is working? Make sense? Now, if you notice the way I set up your vocals, for example, here, when I came in the first time, I added tons of compression on you. Not because you're that loud, it's because you're not. So when you decide to go in and sing loud or talk, because you do talk a little louder than you sing, that compressor is set up so the sound guy is not rushing to adjust that level, because maybe the sound guy is busy doing something else. Kelsey at City Church, her vocals are all over the place level-wise, because she does scream in the middle of the song. You know, she gets very, excited about things. And she goes in and she doesn't do this. She's not, and I like her for that, because I hate when singers do this. She's always right here, okay? And we have the same board. But she's always right here. And she goes from singing something like, it happened this Sunday a lot. You're right here and you go, sing with me, church! And you're like, oh, whoa, where's that coming from? And she never sound checks at the same level that she sings in the service, which is it's a thing. So anyway, does that make sense about this? Let me explain the rest of it, and then we can cut it for the day. So we have threshold, which is the size of how much we want the signal to go down. I'm just going to explain this in very simple terms, okay? I'm not going to get too technical. The threshold will indicate how much signal will come down from zero, from the original level that is coming into our channel, down to our output. Then ratio is the size of the comparison where the input versus the output. When I select 10, that will be 10 to 1, 1.5 to 1, 2 to 1, 2.5, blah, 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 blah. I like to keep vocals either on 8 or on 10. In this console, I use 10. On some other digital consoles, I use 8 or 6 because they're a little bit more severe the way they're set up. Attack is basically how fast you want this to come down. I don't like to attack vocals too hard because I don't want people to notice the compression. If you notice the compression as an spectator, in my opinion, that's not good. I want to be able to be seamless. Now, if I take it out, you notice without and with. Do you notice that? Okay, so yes, there was compression. When you do the comparison, you say, oh, now I hear the compression, the volume coming down. But until I make that A-B comparison to your ears, you didn't notice it, right? That's job well done. So if it's a transparent process and everybody's like, oh man, those vocals were like same level all the way through, nice, that's the way we want to do it. Okay, next one is hold. That's how much or how long this is gonna stay, this is gonna hold that volume down or hold the signal down. So if I do that, notice how slow it goes back to normal.
What does that sound like?
Which will essentially make his volume go this way and then this way, this way, this way. Yeah.
What would be the problem with that if it's too slow? Well, the loud signal will activate the compressor. Compressor will go down, and then by the time it goes back to normal, there's a lot of information coming in that you missed because it was still down. So again, there's no magic to this. There's no specific numbers that I can say you need to put this on this number and this at this other number. It has to do with your ear. So you have to, okay, so I'm controlling the sound and I can hear everything is at the same level. You have to trust your ears, but you don't want it to be noticeable. And one of the ways to make sure it's not noticeable is play around with the attack and the hold. And then the next one is release. Release is the speed of once it's the hold. Once this takes effect, so it attacks, compresses, and then it starts going down. How long it takes to release the signal back to where it should be? You notice how it went back to be very slow going back, right? So if I'm abusing this, see how slow it's going back? So all the soft part that he's singing is still buried in that level. One of the things I like to do with things like bass, for example. I go to a ratio of 5 until I start seeing a little bit of level coming in. And I do a faster release and hold. And notice it's only taking those really pick notes. Doing a little bit of compression without damaging the dynamics, because we want dynamics. So if I want the bass to sound a little more greedy, yeah, for me that's too much. But you notice the bass now sounds even. Now I have the high end and the low end at the same, almost the same level. Kicks. Kicks, I don't go over like 3 point. I usually go 2.5. I do not too fast of an attack, because I want the kick to sound like boom, but then I bring the rest of that resonance in the kick by compressing the rest. But the cool thing is that if I compress the loud part of the kick, when he's playing soft, I can still hear it because I have good volume on it, and when it goes loud, it compresses. Okay, I don't want to compress the whole signal level. I just want to compress the very loud points. Make sense? Except the vocals, I do a lot of compression. Questions, concerns, issues? Anything? Maybe? Last thing, let's go to the second layer of the compression. See, it has a volume here. So this is a lot of fun. You remember in the gates that I was able to choose which frequency activates the gate, so I can only hear that frequency range and nothing else. I can do something similar with vocals, with a compressor. So, have you ever noticed, had this ever happened to you, Randy, where you have all 4 people using the same SM58 or whatever it is, and you use a very similar EQ on all of them, but there's always that one person that has that either 4K pitch or 800 pitch, that it doesn't matter what you do. If you take too much of that, then the rest of the sound sounds either too boxy or sounds too brittle, and EQ is not doing enough, right? Or sometimes people that have that S sound, because here's something that not everybody has the same S. So for example, my first language is Spanish. So my S comes from my tongue going up my mouth. That's how I pronounce the S. But if it's somebody that speaks English, the S comes from here, from the teeth. Especially in Utah, when you get like, oh my God, if they talk like right here, it's right here. So it's in the spectrum, it's different. And it's very hard sometimes to get it with EQ. So I can go to this let me bring this back to normal here. So I can go to, now this is only going to compress a specific frequency group or specific note that that is bugging me that I cannot get out with EQ alone. So for him, it's a little honky. So I'm gonna say 500 is that honk, honk, that honk, right? So you notice that if you're looking at the screen? Honk, honk, honk. That was the only thing that was compressed and for what you heard. And it's because of this filter. This, for me, learning how to use this was great, especially for speech, because I don't want to EQ the one mic for 20 different people in one service. But I can get rid of certain things that I really don't want to hear, like the S, for example. S sounds. So I do like compression on the 5K to 6K, something like this. So different S sounds, especially on this area on the 6K. That's what people get like, ooh, oh man, that sucks, blah 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 blah. So for specific things without affecting the overall sound of the one mic. Again, because unless you have the time to EQ the 5 people with 5 different microphones that are gonna be praying that morning, which I don't know, my church is next to impossible. I don't know your church, maybe you have the time to do that, but I don't. I at least use this tool to be able to control certain things that I know they're gonna be annoying. Make sense? Yeah?
Yep.
Good? Should we stop? We should stop. All right. Any questions? No?
Do you use like the compression for someone like Ron's guitar, where he's really good at bringing? He has like huge levels of dynamics, but sometimes it can be too soft, like during a quiet part, but then really loud. Would compression fix that to make it a little bit more
Yes.
seamless?
Yes.
Or would you just manually switch levels during?
No, the only time I want to move levels is if you have a solo.
Just say, Ron, hit the thing harder.
No, because I like your dynamics. It
Yeah.
just, it
No,
could be
so-
a little bit more of a seamless transition.
So, being careful about answering this,
You know about-
being careful about answering the question is, I don't want to abuse compression. I don't want it to be noticeable, and I don't want to make the compression do my mix for me. Now, if it's a moment where guitar players tend to, for some reason that I still don't explain, they don't know how to adjust their clean channel from their distortion channel. Have you ever seen that? Clean is very loud, distortion is, the reason is scooped, right? When you're distorting or you have overdrive, you have scoop mids, and when you are clean, you have fuller sound, which is kind of the opposite if you think about it, right? I adjust that manually. The compression will be more to kind of stabilize the overall sound, but it's not a replacement for you to adjust the level. So if you put too much of it, it makes everything sound like you're underwater, and it sounds awful. If you don't put enough, well, then you will have certain chords or certain notes that will be more dominant than others, and there's no way you're fast enough to control those in the middle of a musical phrase. And that's what you're looking for. It's stabilizing, not killing the dynamics. It's stabilizing, because you know this. So different notes will have different levels because they vibrate different, right? Your strings will vibrate different if you're here rather than you're here.
Right.
So the compression should be to control when you're here, so you have good level when you're here. If that makes, same with the vocals. So I want the compressor to hit when I'm in the chorus, but when I'm soft in the verse, I don't want that compressor there. I don't need it. The way I set it up is I have you sing a verse, which is your lowest volume, and I make sure that compressor is just barely hitting, but it's there. It means it's waiting for the loud point,
Yeah.
but it's not really activating. When you go up, it will come in. It will activate. Cool? Yes, sir.
So if you're setting up a band, whether it be the church worship team or in a club somewhere, do you take one instrument at a time, set up a gain structure for that, and establish that as a starting point
Yes.
every time?
Yes.
So if I bring my Strat with single coils, and then next week I've got humbuckers and Gibson.
Guess what I'm going to ask you to do? Yeah.
Gain structure, okay.
Do you do it individually and everyone sits and be quiet, or is it?
Yeah, everybody's
playing?
gonna be ready on stage and they're gonna do what I said at that moment. It's a two-way street.
We as a team have nothing to do.
I think it's we don't know that that's the expectation, that that's what needs to happen in order
Well,
to be successful.
Here's
So
the-
if that's what needs to happen, then I can make sure that
So
happens.
there's this church thing. There's this church thing that I'm gonna say is everybody in the church world. They think that because this stay here from Sunday to Sunday is gonna be the same next week. That's why I'm careful at answering Pastor Mike's questions, because there's no magic button that I can say, sounds great.
Yeah.
If that was the case, Randy is not needed here, or any of you guys, and then I'm not needed here.
You just have the box in there.
Yeah, have the box, and you do that, and it works. So,
Even if you have the exact same people play the exact same instruments and the exact same people sing the same things with the exact same microphones every week, some dynamic's gonna be different.
and you know what? And you know what that is? Is it calls the human factor. So when I do sound check, it doesn't matter if it's the same band. The room temperature could be different. The humidity could be different. Her ears could be plugged up today. She could have nasal congestion. I don't know, somebody's dog just died and they have no voice left. There's all sorts of things that could affect this, whether you believe it does or not.
One thing that I think also that maybe Randy's taking this into consideration, this room sounds different during rehearsal than it does with full people. And do you have ways that you compensate for that?
Every room in the world does that.
Yeah, every room.
And yes, there's a way to, more or less, there's ways to compensate for that, but not in the console.
Not what?
Not in the console.
Oh, got it.
When you guys do your Sunday morning configuration, do the musicians, do the singers do they practice songs for a period of time?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. Do they do that on another day of the week, or do they just do it on Sunday morning?
They do, but we are a portable church, so we are striking every church, every Sunday.
Because that's one thing that I deal with is when they start singing, at first, they're not paying any attention to any of the mixes. They're just singing because they're working on the layout of the music. That's fine. That's one stage. Then there's the next stage where they turn around and they sing and they play. And at that point, they're still kind of, there's some of the musicians that are still kind of skeptical about what they're playing, and their microphone might be over here or over here.
Yeah.
And then at 11 o'clock, microphone's here, and everything changes.
Right. Proximity effect.
Yeah, and we don't do when we do the thing with microphones, where John or, even Don Smith before that would have everybody walk, this person talks in the microphone, okay, can you hear yourself in the minute monitors, yeah, they go down the line. That's not doing the proper gain structure, which I don't know if we have to come in earlier or what we've got to do that.
No, it's just added to your routine. It's
Yeah,
just,
I try to do it when you guys come in after you take the break, and you come in, that's when I start trying to do that. But if I adjust the gain structure during something like that, it's gonna affect everybody's ear monitor, ear monitors, the stage.
yeah, you don't necessarily want to do it in the middle.
I know, so I don't do that. I haven't adjusted the gains since that first time you were here. If anybody else has adjusted the gains, that's, I don't know.
I don't know how to measure that just looking at it, but
Yeah, but I still don't think we have a good gain structure. I'd love to be able to come in again on a Saturday and do a full set.
sure.
Bring everybody in, bring their families in, throw down some barbecue.
Hot dogs. So this is the way I run sound at City Church. We don't sound check the drums because we're just loud, so we know the drums are there. We line check the tracks, make sure they work, and then I have two different guitar players with two different needs. One leads, one doesn't. They are both very particular on their guitar sound in the mix. So we all use in-ears, so they want things to be certain levels, yada yada yada. So those two guys get a sound check every Sunday. Believe it or not, every Sunday they change things. And then I have Kelsey. Kelsey just wants her in-ear to be loud as we can give it to her for her vocal. She likes loud click and some piano. That's it. That's Kelsey. And she usually goes, I can hear myself fine. We have different piano players every other Sunday. So that means every other Sunday I have to adjust that piano. Because I have some piano players that are not really professional and they don't dig in. Then I have another piano guy that, is gospel guy and he just goes to town. So that piano level is all over the place all the time. So I make them go through a quick verse and chorus. That's my sound check, literally. Verse, chorus. We stopped, and I go one by one. What do you need? This, and that. What do you need? This, and that. We do that again. Verse and chorus. That's all we do. We don't do a full song. We do it again. We're happy. Go do your rehearsal. I'm going to get coffee. That's literally my sound check.
That's the very first thing you do.
Every Monday. Every Sunday. Yes. Very things I do.
Then they do their rehearsals.
Then they do the rehearsal. Then usually at the end of each song, they say, give me more of this, less of that, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They're always minute adjustments because I already did the big adjustments at the beginning.
So you have to reset your gain every Sunday.
I have to
Not
reset.
entirely.
I have to reset my gain every musician change,
Okay.
which happens every other Sunday.
Okay.
Because I have, like I said, 2 different guitar players, about 3 different keyboard players, 2 drummers. So they're all different in the way they approach it. Good.
Somebody brought up a question a couple of weeks ago, silly thing. Wasn't sure if you've heard of it yet. Has anybody got any, in post-production, you can adjust the pitch of somebody singing, make them sound where they should be. There's nothing we can do in live.
There are both software products and hardwired products that will do that. It's so dangerous to use live because it requires the person to at least have consistent bad pitch you cannot just, you know, there is, and would it work in a room like this? Absolutely not. Because you have so much bleeding through the mics of everything else.
Yeah.
There's no device in the world that will distinguish what's human and
The
what's
only
not.
ones I've ever seen in the past were all, in post-production, it's easy. In live production, there was always a delay.
No, they're
There's
nowadays they're good products
I don't
with
know
very
if
low
anybody uses it. I was just
latency.
curious if you'd seen some, 'cause I haven't
Yeah,
really
they're
looked
it.
at it for years.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen it, but are they used widely? No, no. Because there's no way to control bleeding of ambience noise through the mic, like in a studio.
Oh, yeah.
What you could do,
So,
Yeah.
like I said, don't worry about any of that question. That's just, we can go back to that.
okay. Sound check in just a regular environment is even shorter than that. When we say festival style, for example, is I put lines and everybody's sharing lines, and I go kick, snare, tom, hi-hat, overhead, bass. They go like this, make sure everything goes. All right, go.
Yeah.
And as we go, he goes, whatever it is, and I know vocal up, vocal down, you know, monitor, they point at the monitor, guitar up, monitor, guitar down, piano down, and that's how we go, and that's in the middle of the first two songs, and that's how we do it.
One key thing in that is making sure that if you do something like this, but the guy at the mixing's already doing something like this for somebody else, and he's not looking at you, make sure that he sees you, otherwise,
Eye contact.
eye
Eye
contact.
contact. If you
Otherwise,
see
it's
me
like-
on stage, I'm like a creeper. I'm always like looking for eye contact and doing this. And then when they look at me, I point at them, so they know I'm talking to you. I point at them, and they go, you know, I'm usually stage left, and they go like this. Here, they point down here, and I do this. They go yes. I point out. They say okay. I go this. I'm done. They know what I'm doing. They nod me yes. I'm back to here.
That's when somebody
Creeping
tries,
out, you know.
That's why when somebody tries talking to me, I do like this, and I do like this. I say, hold on, let me get it in my ear, and then I say, okay, because then I can hear what they have to say.
And you know when you're dealing with seasoned musicians, because and it's funny. It's very generic, but it's funny. So when you're doing sound check, and I know my sound check is gonna be great when I start like give me kick, and they start doing kick, and you see the entire band doing this. That means I need kick, and I need kick here. So I know that's gonna be a great sound check, because if I see hands up without me asking, they know what the drill is. And then I start bringing whatever it is. Let's say it's bass. Bring bass up, and they do this, that means I'm good. There's no other conversation. It's just this. Good.
So you're setting their in-ears
Yeah, as we go.
rather than being on the app. and then
Yeah,
set their-
I think the app is a great thing, but there's no replacement for a good sound guy doing monitors. Because the app required for you to let go what you're doing, touch it, go back to what you're doing.
So should we set our buds flat and let the sound guy do it, or what?
No. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying, there's gotta be a balance between trusting your sound guy, adjusting your level as you're playing, so you don't have to stop what you're doing.
Yeah.
And there's another thing, opportunity for you. The song is over, and that piano is drilling your ear. The song is already over. I'm not gonna ask the sound guy from over there turn down the piano when I can do this.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So if it's a little adjustment that it doesn't require the sound guy to be paying attention just to you, I can go to the app and do it.
Sure.
But if he's already going through the process of of setting up gain structure and looking at you guys, okay, who needs what? Trust your sound guy more than the app. That's what I'm suggesting. So one doesn't eliminate the other. It would be silly to think otherwise. Having the app, 2018, we live in the future, that's exciting. And I make a living being a monitor guy, so that could potentially take my job away, but I cannot tell you how many times those musicians, instead of going to the app, they look at me and they give me this, and I'm right there to help them out.
But you also gotta remember too, that this digital board has multiple levels. So if I'm working on something with somebody else's, it might take me a couple of clicks to get to what you need me to get to, so.
The funny part is that they will say, oh, that's perfect before you get to that. And at that point I go,
We had a band up at Oktoberfest on Saturday that did exactly that.
yeah,
We hardly even touched it. They said, oh, no, that's good. Well, okay.
all right, hot dog. So, yeah, happens quite a bit.
And if you want to hear what a sound guy has to go through in trying to make something sound good, go to Oktoberfest and just listen to the music inside that tent. The tent itself is a giant speaker with membrane like this, that in itself resonates everything.
And then you have to deal with David Holiday.
Huge
David
amplifier.
Holiday, everything.
Of course, we just installed new speakers. It actually helps a little bit now.
So,
Do you have a recording of our Oktoberfest?
good. Well,
Thank you.
now next week we move into EQ, and EQ is gonna take the whole shebang. Because I'm gonna tell you how EQ can do or break, make or break.
Will we have some music maybe where we can hear some differences? That's
Yeah.
one thing I want to hear a little bit more of.
Yeah. You'll hear me playing drums, so I'll bring the CD check one.
All right.
Not that it's great.